Lecture 3. You're moving right along in these things. Lecture 3, we're going to talk about the rest of the rubric and what I'm looking for when you put a speech together. Remember, the purpose of public speaking is to achieve understanding, sympathy, and agreement or action on your words. It might not be agreement, but they might act. They might go look something up. They might go research something. They might talk to other. Hey, I heard this person in my class say blah, 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 blah. I heard this lecture where... Then they might go and look up something. And I think that's a win. That's a big W. Or a dub, as the kids say, I think. I really need help in the Discord with cool slang. So if you know any cool slang, just put it in the Discord, and I will try to incorporate it into these talks as best I can. Remember, I'm Gen X, and we are either drinking or we don't care too much. So you have to keep that in mind. Or we're playing Atari or something. I don't know. But anyway, let's get back to where we were in Lecture 2. In Lecture 2, we were talking about these rubrics. Now, if you do well on each of these, I think that you should be able to get an A on any speech that you give. Your first couple, you're probably not going to get an A. And that's because you're going to have problems in one of these categories. I don't know which one. It's not universal. Everybody's different. But these are the categories that I think best operationalize the larger goals of good public speaking that are out there. If you can do these in any presentation and you meet these to a reasonable level of acceptability, you have a really good chance to get the audience on your side, which is the role of every speech, to get the audience to move a little bit closer to what you want them to think, believe, feel, do, or be. Just as kind of a short list there. Okay, here's one a lot of people have trouble with. Do you have a clear theme, topic, or point? Do you have a thesis? A lot of people give speech, and a lot of times this happens in speeches about heroes, like great heroes, sports heroes that people have. They just kind of talk about a bunch of stats about them. And that doesn't really help me understand what your point is. Okay, they were very good at this game, but why are they an admirable figure? Can you explain that in terms of a larger point? And having a clear thesis helps you do that. If you explain exactly why this person is so admirable or admired, and if you can do it in a way that makes the statistics make sense, that'd be great. It also makes you pick and choose. An information dump or a fact dump doesn't change minds. It just makes people say, well, there's a bunch of facts. And as I said a couple of lectures ago, when people hear information from somebody, they are automatically, biologically turned on to question everything that person is saying. That's our natural go-to, is to say, I don't know, to scrutinize, to say, is that really enough for me to believe that? That's kind of how we reason. And our own ideas, the things we share, we're lighter on. We're nicer to. We don't interrogate as hard. So keep that in mind when you're going to think about a clear theme, topic, or point. Instead of just telling us that Michael Jordan is awesome, like Michael Jordan was not only a good basketball player, he was an exceptional physical athlete, because the things he did in the NBA prove that he's an exceptional physical athlete, or something like that. Or if you want to give a speech perhaps on mental health, and you say, I want to raise awareness about mental health, I don't know if that's good enough than say, I think that this particular illness or this particular kind of illness is misunderstood, and that misunderstanding is very dangerous for people who suffer from it. I think as clear and precise as you can get, the better your talk will be, the better your speech will be at getting people to say, oh yeah, they got something to say. Oh yeah, this is interesting to me. Oh, I wonder if I should, I can see why they feel that way. Oh, I get it, and I can see why they feel that way. Maybe I should change my attitude about this. That's where we're going. Is it something the audience could easily repeat to someone when they ask, what was that about? That's such a good metric for that. How many times have you skipped class and you ask somebody, what happened in class today? And if you're on the receiving end of that, if the class was disorganized and crazy, you're like, I don't know. And they just kind of talked, read out of the book, talked. I think we have a quiz next week. I mean, if it's disorganized, doesn't have much of a focus to it, it's hard to relate. And that comes with it a judgment about the quality of that presenter, the quality of that speaker comes with it. So think about that when you're putting your speech together. Do you develop your topic or theme with interesting supporting points containing examples, research, and other forms of proof. Okay. We're going to have to go over to the other sheet here. What does it mean to prove something? In public speaking and in rhetoric, what it means to prove something is to meet the audience's demand or expectation for reasonable or good evidence. That's it. That's really it. We are not interested in things like truth or facts in the way that they're used in the common kind of parlance out there. We're not terribly interested in these things. Instead of it, maybe we can make some equations here. I always like to do a little math. Are there like math signs on this thing? Oh, look at that. Okay. So instead of truth, what would we want? We would want something that is, I can't think of a good thing that we would want instead of that. I think what we want is something that is, convincing. Now, I'm not saying that like truth is bad or we should just lie to each other. What I'm saying is that if you go into a speech with the attitude that you have the truth and you're going to provide the truth to these people, you're going to fail. Because the truth is one of these things that the more you believe you have it, the less you have to less explaining of it to yourself you do, the less justification you do to yourself about it, and the less considering of other viewpoints you have of it. Instead of facts, what we really want here, and earlier I had a really good word for this, but I can't seem to remember what it was. Basically, we want to make connections. We want to make connections instead of offering the facts to people and saying, well, here's the facts, believe it. Here are the facts. We want to make a deeper kind of connection. We want to get people, it's not necessarily feelings. You know, the internet host Ben Shapiro says, facts don't care about your feelings. I guess that's convincing to people who are already on his side about certain things. But the facts often don't speak for themselves. I think what we want to do is we want to make connections. So I forget, I had an F word for that, but I don't know. It's bad to play around with F words, but yeah, I can't remember what it is. I'll probably remember it and come back to it in a later video. So that's not really what we're interested when we are dealing with this. Aristotle offered us two modes of proof in his book, The Rhetoric. Artistic and inartistic. And the inartistic ones are deeds, laws, public oaths, things like that. Things that are externally it's not objective. I think objectivity is the worst kind of thing to look for in proof because objectivity often means that anyone from anywhere from any time would be convinced by it. So the bar is so incredibly high that you'll never really be able to find it. It's more of a philosophical ideal that maybe we want to use when we're conducting research or trying to find something. We'd say, that's the ideal. I know I'm never going to meet it, but I'm going to try to find things that check back for the errors that we might find along the way in that. But intersubjective verifiability is, I think, the gold standard, which is the way science works. Like if I conduct an experiment as a scientist in a lab here and I have X conditions and then someone in China does that same experiment and they have the same conditions, we should get the same result. That's intersubjectively verifiable. My observations on a controlled experiment should meet the observations of another scientist on a controlled experiment. So these are intersubjectively verifiable things. Like here's what the law says. Let me see that. Oh, this is what the law says. We go to a legal expert and they verify it. These are the ones that we look up and we research and we find out in the world. They're not necessarily facts. They're more of things that are intersubjectively true. Multiple people can see them and say, oh yeah, that's how it is. They're facts in the way that I think facts are most useful when we're thinking about speech. We're thinking about using our voice to make other people want to do things. The artistic proofs. These are all ancient Greek words. Logos, ethos, and pathos. And we already talked about ethos. You remember what that means, right? Do you remember what that means? I need like a little piano or something because then we could do Mr. Rogers. I'd be like, you remember what that means, neighbor? A little piano would play there. No? Not good enough for you? Okay. I'll think of something better. So logos is the Greek word for word. Like logos up. No, you don't like that joke either? Okay. I don't hear a lot of laughing on the other side of that screen. But it's also the word that we use for logic. We get logic from that. So this is what we would call reason. Ethos, we already talked about. Pathos, from where you get the word pathetic and also the word empathetic, is feeling. We can use feelings to prove things. We can use someone's great emotional welling up about patriotism or whatnot, that can come welling up and be used to prove something. And then ethos is we can use credibility and goodwill to prove something. So these are things we create with our words. We create reason with our words. We create feelings with our words. And we create credibility, trust, and welfare with our words. If I can speak in a way that shows you that I really do care about young people, and I can tell you stories about that, I'm using ethos to get proof that I'm right about this particular point in my speech. But it's an open question when it means to prove something, because in public speaking, we're always looking to the audience. What are their standards? And as I said last time with the opening, with the hook, you're constituting your audience into a particular way of being. So think about your audience and who they are, but then think about what they're capable of being, who they're capable of being, what they're capable of thinking like, all positive and kind of uplifting, like lifting them up a little bit higher out of the drudgery of their CNN-addled ability to speak about issues and events, and really address them as thinking, feeling, and caring people, and show that you are also one of these people. And they will try to meet you halfway. Most people get really angry and push back on an idea because they care about the idea. It's not because they're a jerk. It's not because they're dumb. It's because they care about the idea. And that's something I think we've forgotten. And I think in public speaking, we have to remember that. It's another principle of public speaking that I think we just have to have, is that people, it would be things like people can change their minds. They can be persuaded by words to change their minds, and that they generally are seeking out the good. And they get upset and angry about things they're being suggested to do because they want to protect something good. They feel like they've been wronged, or that wrong is happening, and they feel justified in being so angry. But they also don't have really good tools for dealing with it, which is why everybody should have courses like this. Is your presentation well organized? Does it logically follow in a way that's easy for people to understand? More on this later, but this would be, don't jump around. Oh yeah, and also, and I forgot to tell you about that. Don't jump around. Be like, first, we're going to look at this aspect, then we're going to look at this, then we're going to look at this. So in the case of the student-athlete example from a couple of videos ago, first we'll look at what student-athletes' lives are like, what they have to do. Secondly, we'll look at what their future looks like. And thirdly, we'll look at why they aren't paid and whether or not they could be paid. So that might be the organization I would have for that. And I would also push it forward so the audience isn't surprised with that organization. You want them to kind of understand it and hook onto it in a way to where they can follow what you're saying. And then conclusion, strongly with a charge to the audience of something to consider, think about, or take with them. This is what they're taking home. This is the swag. What's the thing you want to give them to chew on their ride home or their walk home? What's the thing that you want? Sorry, there's a bug in here. What is it that you want to provide them to think about on their way back out? What is that going to be? And how is it going to help them think about the seed you planted, about the change they need to make? And that's what the conclusion is. So these are the rough points here. Obviously, there's a lot more to come and a lot more to do. And the book has a lot more detail on how to get deep into creating a really good speech. So I think these lectures are kind of the first 3 initial ones. I'm going to make some other ones from time to time, but the next one will be about the chapters of the book. I think we'll go in order down those and kind of see how we can do with that. And hopefully this has been helpful. Please let me know in Discord. Comment on these videos, chat about them, ask questions about them. I'm happy to elaborate on anything I've mentioned here. And hopefully this gives you a good start on thinking about what you want to do that first speech on. It's kind of cool. You can talk about anything you want. What are you going to talk about? What's on your mind? What do we need to hear about? And also, what does the world need to hear about? It's you. You have a voice. You're the only one with it. Let's make it effective, useful, and pleasurable to hear what you have to say. That's the role and the function of a rhetorical education.